Mantras of our Divine Mother. Om Namo Bhagavate. This mantra was given by our Divine Mother. In this, the first word represents the supreme invocation, the invocation to the Supreme. The second word represents total self-giving, perfect surrender. The third word represents the aspiration, what the manifestation must become divine. Om Namo Bhagavate. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 1, The Book of Beginnings, Canto 3, The Yoga of the King, The Yoga of the Soul's Release, page 23. His soul lived as eternity's delegate. His mind was like a fire assailing heaven. His will a hunter in the trials of life. An ocean impulse lifted every breath. Each action left the footprints of a god. Each moment was a beat of puissant wings. The little plot of our mortality, touched by this tenant from the heights, became a playground of the living infinite. This bodily appearance is not all. The form deceives, the person is a mask. Hid deep in man, celestial powers can dwell. His fragile ship conveys through the sea of years an incognito of the imperishable. A spirit that is a flame of God abides, a fiery portion of the wonderful, artist of his own beauty and delight, immortal in our mortal poverty. This sculpture of the forms of the infinite, this screened, unrecognized inhabitant, initiate of his own veiled mysteries, hides in a small dumb seed his cosmic thought. In the mute strength of the occult idea, in the mute strength of the occult idea, determining predestined shape and act, passenger from life to life, from scale to scale, changing his image self from form to form, he regards the icon growing by his gaze, and in the warm foresees the coming God. At last the traveler, in the paths of time, arrives on the frontiers of eternity. In the transient symbol of humanity, draped, he feels his substance of undying self and loses his kinship to mortality. A beam of the eternal, a beam of the eternal smites his heart. His thought stretches into infinitude. All in him turns to spirit vastnesses. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that superlife. His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that superlife. He has drunk from the breast of the mother of the worlds. A topless supernature fills his frame. She adopts his spirit's everlasting ground as the security of her changing world and shapes the figure of her unborn minds. Immortally, she conceives herself in him. In the creature, the unveiled creatrix works. Her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes, her being is his through a vast identity. Then is revealed in man the overt divine. A static oneness and dynamic power descend in him, the integral Godhead's seals. His soul and body take that splendid stamp. A long, dim preparation is man's life, a circle of toil and hope and war and peace, tracked out by life on matter's obscure ground. In his climb to a peak no feet have ever trod, he seeks through a penumbra shot with flame, a veiled reality half known, ever missed, a search for something or someone never found, cult of an ideal never made real here, an endless spiral of ascent and fall, until at last is reached the giant point through which his glory shines, for whom we were made, and we break into the infinity of God. Across our nature's border line, we escape into supernature's arc of living light. This now was witnessed in that son of force. In him that high transition laid its base, original and supernal immanence of which all nature's process is the art. The cosmic worker set his secret hand to turn this frail mud engine to heaven use. Words of our Divine Mother, taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, question and answers. Year 1950-51, date 4th January 1951. Our Divine Mother reads out the article Transformation on Education and then comments on it as follows. Our Divine Mother says, we want an integral transformation, the transformation of the body and all its activities. Formerly, when one spoke of transformation, one meant solely the transformation of the inner consciousness. One tried to discover in oneself this deep consciousness and rejected the body and its activities like an encumbrance and a useless thing in order to attend only to the inner moment. Sri Aurobindo declared that this was not enough. The truth demanded that the material world should also participate in this transformation and become an expression of the deeper truth. But when people heard this, many thought it was possible to transform the body and its activities without bothering in the least about what was happening within, naturally, this is not quite true. Before you can undertake this work of physical transformation, says our Divine Mother, which of all things is the most difficult, your inner consciousness must be firmly established, solidly established in the truth, so that this transformation may be the final expression of the truth, final for the moment at least. Our Divine Mother says the starting point of this transformation is receptivity. We have already spoken about it. That is the indispensable condition. That is the indispensable condition for obtaining the transformation. Then comes the change of consciousness. This change of consciousness and its preparation have often been compared with the formation of the chicken in the egg. Till the very last second, the egg remains the same, there is no change. And it is only when the chicken is completely formed, absolutely alive, that it itself makes its little beak a hole in the shell and comes out. Something similar takes place at the moment of the change of consciousness. For a long time, you have the impression that nothing is happening, that your consciousness is the same as usual. And if you have an intense aspiration, you even feel a resistance as though you are knocking against a wall which does not yield. But when you're ready within, a last effort, the pecking in the shell of the being, and everything opens and you are projected into another consciousness. Our Divine Mother says, I said that it was a revolution of the basic equilibrium, that is, a total reversal of consciousness comparable with what happens to light when it passes through a prism. Or it is as though you were turning a ball inside out, which cannot be done except in the fourth dimension. One comes out of the ordinary three-dimensional consciousness to enter the higher four-dimensional consciousness and into an infinite number of dimensions. This is the indispensable starting point. Unless your consciousness changes its dimension, it will remain just what it is, with the superficial vision of things, and the profundities will escape you. And then our Divine Mother says, is there anyone here who has already had the experience of this reversal of consciousness and who can explain what he has experienced? For this, one of the sadhaks says, Sweet Mother, it was like a pain in the heart which lasted for a day. The next day when I woke up, it was as if I were coming out from a profound meditation, and all my thoughts, all my actions seemed to be directed by something or someone who was watching beside my head. All the words which came out of my mouth were right. Then our Divine Mother says, what was this pain like? A pressure? A tearing part? A tension? For this, the sadhak says, it was as though something in me was not happy, but all the change during the night, the next day, the uneasiness has gone. For this, our Divine Mother says, it was undoubtedly a mental opening to the higher consciousness, an ascent of the mental consciousness towards the higher consciousness. And it was probably a resistance in the emotional, vital, which caused the pain, that disagreeable sensation which disappeared during the night with the liberation of the consciousness in a higher domain. Then the sadhak says, Sweet Mother, when I stood before our Lord Sri Aurobindo, I felt a kind of sharp pain. I prayed to Sri Aurobindo to give me something, and suddenly the pain was changed into an intense joy. For this, our Divine Mother says, this was a contact with your psychic being. Then the sadhak says, Sweet Mother, one has often the experience of an ascent of the consciousness above the earth, one seems to enter a region where all problems, all questions disappear rather than receive an answer. They seem no longer of any importance. But still, this is not going from knowledge to knowledge. For this, our Divine Mother says, this is an opening of the inner being to the Divine Presence in the psychic center. And there, at every moment, not only what must be done, but and there, at every moment, not only what must be done, but why it should be done and how it should be done. And you have the vision of the truth of things behind their appearances. For this, our Divine Mother says, this is an opening of the inner being. This is an opening of the inner being to the Divine Presence in the psychic center. And there, at every moment, not only what must be done, but why it should be done and how it should be done. And you have the vision of the truth of things behind their appearances. Instead of seeing things in the usual way, that is from outside, and so much from outside that from outside that except in a few rare cases one is incapable even of knowing what another person thinks, you must make a great effort, only the surface of things and nothing what goes on behind. Well, after this inner opening and this identification with the presence in the psychic center, things from within outwards, and the outer existence becomes an expression more or less deformed of what you see within. You are aware of the inner existence of things and their form, and their outer existence is only a more or less deformed expression of this inner truth. And it is because of this that I say that the basic equilibrium is completely changed. Instead of being outside the world and seeing it as something outside you, you are inside the world and see outer forms expressing in a more or less clumsy fashion what is within, which for you is the truth, says our Divine Mother. Next date, 8th Jan 1951. Our Divine Mother reads her article about what a child should always remember in the book on education. And then a child says, "Sweet Mother, you say that one should have the certitude of truth's final victory. But doesn't the certitude seem very different and often the very opposite of what one teaches in ordinary life?" For this, our Divine Mother says, yes. Generally, it is believed that things always end badly in nature. Everyone knows the story of those who have met a lamentable end after having enjoyed great success in their life, of those who have extraordinary capacities and who finally lost them, of a nation which for a long time or a long period was a model of a marvelous civilization. The civilization vanishes, and the nation is changed into something so deplorable that one can no longer recollect what it was. It seems that the story of the earth is a story of victories followed by defeats, not of defeats followed by victories. But in fact, whatever it is, a question of universal and divine things, what is needed is the universal vision and divine understanding of things in order to know how the truth expresses itself. There is a kind of general pessimism which says that even if things begin well, they end badly, that it is a weakness, hypocrisy, falsehood, and wickedness which always seem to have the upper hand. That is why those who see the world in their own personal dimension have said that the world is bad and that we have only to finish with it and get out of it as soon as possible. Teachers have taught this, but their teaching only proves that their vision is too narrow and in the dimension of their human individuality. In truth, the moments of nature are like those of the tides. They they recede, advance, and recede. In the universal life, even in the terrestrial life, this means a progressive advance, though apparently it is cut up by withdrawals. But these withdrawals are only an appearance. As one draws back to spring forward, you seem to be drawing back, but it is simply in order to go much further. You will tell me that this is all very well, but how to give a child the certitude that the truth will triumph? For when he learns history, when he observes nature, he will see that things do not always end well. For this, the sadhak says, children must be taught to see the divine manifestation in the world and not the side which ends badly. For this, a divine mother says, no. If the child thinks that the divine is different from the world, his idea that everything ends badly will be quite justified. For this, the sadhak says, children must be given the idea of divine justice. For this, our divine mother says, but we know nothing about it. For this justice, for this justice does not manifest in the world as it is today. However, if one observes things a little deeply, one perceives that there is a progress, that things become better and better, though apparently they do not improve. And for a consciousness seated a little higher, it is quite evident that all evil, at least what we call evil, all falsehood that is contrary to the truth, all suffering, all opposition is the result of a disequilibrium. Our Divine Mother says, I believe that one who is habituated to seeing things from his higher plane sees immediately that it is like that. Consequently, the world cannot be founded upon a disequilibrium, for if so, it would have been long since disappeared. One feels that at the origin of the universe, there must have been a supreme equilibrium, and perhaps, as we said the other day, a progressive equilibrium, which is exact opposite of what we have been taught and what we are accustomed to call evil. There is no absolute evil, but an evil, a more or less partial disequilibrium. This may be taught to a child in a very simple way. It may be shown with the help of material things that an object will fall if it is not balanced, that only things in equilibrium can keep their position and duration. There is another quality which must be cultivated in a child from a very young age, that is, the feeling of uneasiness, of a moral disbalance which it feels when it has done certain things, not because it has been told not to do them, not because it fears punishments, but spontaneously. For example, a child who hurts its comrade through mischief, if it is in its normal, natural state, will experience uneasiness, a grief deep in its being because what it has done is contrary to its inner truth. For, in spite of all teachings, in spite of all that thought can think, there is something in the depths which has a feeling of perfection, a greatness, a truth, and is plainly contradicted by all the moments opposing this truth. If a child has not been spoiled by its milieu, by deplorable examples around it, that is, if it is in the normal state, spontaneously without its being told anything, it will feel an uneasiness when it has done something against the truth of its being. And it exactly upon this that later its effort for progress must be founded. Our Divine Mother says, for if you want to find one teaching, one doctrine upon which to base your progress, you will never find anything. There is only one true guide, that is the inner guide, who does not pass through a mental consciousness. Naturally, if a child gets a disastrous education, it will try ever harder to extinguish within itself this little true thing. Sometimes it succeeds so well that it loses all the contact and also the power of distinguishing between good and evil. That is why I insist that, says our Divine Mother.